Two Geeks, Two Beers podcast. Nerdy obsessions, drunken ramblings with Morgan Jeffrey and Tom Eames.
Not everyone is meant to make a difference, but for me, the choice to live an ordinary life is no longer an option.
3 days. Hang on for the ultimate spin. Rated PG-13. Opens Friday.
How come yours is always so clean, and this one just always spills everywhere?
You're a mess. Hello, and welcome to episode 95 of Two Geeks, Two Beers. I'm Morgan Jeffrey, and I'm so high I can hear heaven. With me, he's some kind of freaky loo or something. Wackadoo. It's Tom Eames.
Hello. Thank you for reminding me of Chad Kroeger. I hope we talk about it more later.
Of course I will. Who are we? You sure you want to know? This podcast is not for the faint of heart. Yes, still on a comic book theme after last episode's Drunk History of Heroes, we're web-slinging back to the early 2000s to revisit Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the release of which marked a huge moment in pop culture and continues to shape cinema almost 2 decades later. So, coming up. Sorry, my mouth just filled with saliva then. I don't know what happened. I was like, oh.
Well, that's apt, because Josey Scott was the lead singer for Saliva, wasn't he? So
he was. That wasn't even... Yeah. Didn't even plan that. Seamless. So coming up, how Spider-Man almost sunk Titanic, how it almost launched an MCU of its own, and the alternative sequel you might not be aware of. So, Tom, what are your memories of 2002's Spider-Man?
Well, listeners, you'll be amazed to know that I have seen it.
It's a good start.
That's a good start, isn't it? Yeah. No, I loved it when it came out, the first one. It's weird, isn't it? Because before Spider-Man, the film, you had X-Men. That was kind of the only two. Like, obviously X2, I think, came out before Spider-Man. I might be wrong. Might be around that sort of time.
I think around about the same time.
Yeah, so obviously you had Batman and Superman films from before that, but in terms of early noughties, these were the big ones that's happening at the time, and it was a while before MCU started, so superheroes still weren't cool. No. Even though X-Men was great, they still weren't considered cool at the time.
Not mainstream.
Still a bit nerdy. Yeah, they're not mainstream yet, and but it was exciting because I feel like I didn't really know much. I didn't read Spider-Man comics at the time. I didn't know much about the character, but as I'm sure you can guess, I'm sure you did as well, related to him a little bit. Tobey Maguire's performance, he wasn't your typical heartthrob actor, not an unattractive man, but he's just a regular dude. It seemed he wasn't all about being ripped or anything like that. He was just a high school kid, and it was great. Really enjoyed it, and then it obviously kick-started the next few years of the sort of superhero films that didn't quite cut the mustard before MCU did it properly. It inspired things like Daredevil and all those sort of films, but Fantastic Four and all that. But no, I really, really enjoyed it. I've seen the second one, haven't seen the third one, probably for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother. It's something I realised researching this episode, which really struck me, was that this film came out in 2002 and Iron Man came out in 2008. There was only 6 years between them, which seems mad because this does very much feel like it feels like it came out years, if not decades, before the kind of the modern, because we so think of the Marvel movies, the MCU, as being modern cinema, and this already feels like a classic. It feels
this was the first one which was a major box office success, wasn't it, in terms of modern, as it were, inverted commas, superhero films. I think this was the first one to take it to another stratosphere. So
it was a big hit, yeah. And I was really, really excited for this movie when it came out. So I was quite basic in that my two biggest loves as a Marvel fanboy, as someone who did read the comics, were X-Men and Spider-Man. The comics I loved, and then the animated series, both of which we've covered in episodes 18 and 70 of this podcast. So to have the X-Men film, the first one in 2000, which I really loved at the time, and then this 2 years later, I thought, this is it. As a Marvel fan, it won't ever get any better than this.
Little did you know.
But, as much as, you've got the MCU now, which I love, but I think there is something great about the simplicity of this Spider-Man film and Spider-Man 2. Although I have to say, controversially, I prefer the first film, which I know is an unpopular opinion. But I think it's that simplicity that means they stand the test of time, which is why people now are so excited about the possibility of these movies being revisited, possibly, in some form. But more on that later. So let's kick things off with the trailer for 2002's Spider-Man.
Who am I? You sure you want to know? If somebody told you I was just your average, ordinary guy, not a care in the world, somebody lied. Truth is, it wasn't always like this. There was a time when life was a lot less complicated. Can I take your picture for the school paper?
Sure. In this lab, we have 15 genetically enhanced super spiders.
There's 14. One's missing.
Peter, are you all right?
I'm fine.
Pete, look, you're changing. I know I went through exactly the same thing at your age.
No, not exactly.
Wow.
Peter, may I introduce my father, Norman Osborne?
Great honor to meet you, sir.
Harry tells me you're quite the science whiz. You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
What the hell is that? Whatever it is, somebody has to stop it.
With great power comes great responsibility.
This is my gift.
Wow.
It is my curse.
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
Do I get to say thank you this time?
You do too much. You're not Superman, you know.
Cool. What about that, eh?
Nice. That
Now-
looks amazing, even now, like nearly 20 years later.
And you've not watched. You didn't watch. You know, of course, you've not done your research. You didn't go back and watch Spider-Man before this, and you've not watched it for a few years. But that trailer was playing. You were quoting some of the lines. You know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's you know, so many moments in that, and obviously the upside down kiss is iconic in cinema. I'd say now that whole thing. But yeah, no, just still holds up. Still looks really good. So I was thinking, like other films, even of that era, like Daredevil. I don't want to keep slagging off Daredevil, but like even films from not that far before it, like late '90s, look quite dated now. Whereas that looks really good. It's only nearly 20 years old.
There's a moment in that trailer where Tobey Maguire is shirtless, and you rolled back your earlier comment. You were like, actually, he is quite ripped, but. What I will say about Tobey Maguire's physique in Spider-Man, and I won't dwell
it's
about
attainable. It's attainable.
This is it. I won't dwell on it for long. But he looks like if, and this is a big if, me and you know,
Actually tried.
Cut out the KFC and worked out a bit. We could look like Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man. We're not going to ever look like Chris Hemsworth, but we could potentially look like Tobes.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man was released in the United States on the 3rd of May 2002, but its journey from comic book to the big screen was long and complex, taking 20 years with numerous aborted attempts in that time. So, bear with.
So was this the first Spider-Man film, like proper film?
Yeah, so there was a Spider-Man TV series in the 70s, and I think they might have done that thing of, jamming a couple of episodes together and releasing it as a quote-unquote film. But this was the first ever Spider-Man motion picture.
There you go.
So in the early 1980s, Marvel Comics began negotiations with film producers to bring Spider-Man to the big screen. Producer Roger Corman was the first to hold an option on the Spider-Man property and began to develop a film at Orion Pictures. Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee was brought on to write a screenplay which featured Cold War themes and Dr. Octopus as the primary antagonist, but the project did not come to fruition following budgetary disputes between Corman and Lee. Corman presumably wanted no budget, Lee wanted some. The film rights were then acquired by Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus of the Canon Group, and Leslie Stevens, the creator of The Outer Limits, was hired to write the screenplay. Stevens' script featured Peter Parker as an ID badge photographer who becomes subject to a mad scientist experiment which transforms him into a human tarantula. So, did they read the comics? I don't know. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Toby Hooper signed on to direct. But Stanley intervened. He hated the horror route the studio was taking with the character and demanded that a new script be written that was closer to the source material. So by 1985, a new script was being written by Ted Newsom and John Braccato, who is the co-writer of Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation. And in this version, Peter Parker receives his spider-like abilities from a cyclotron experiment, and Dr. Octopus again served as the villain.
What's a cyclotron experiment? You said that like it was something we should all know what it is.
Well, what I like is that you expect me to have that information at my fingertips. like I'm gonna two or three beers in go, well, Tom, how a cyclotron experiment? I don't fucking know. Google it.
It's apparently a particle accelerator.
It's like a particle accelerator. It's like
like that thing they did, the big one.
What was it? What was the big one they did? What was the big one?
The Hadron Collider.
Hadron Collider. So
yeah.
Peter Parker was in a large Hadron Collider and became Spider-Man that way. I guess it's as credible as any other way. So
yeah.
Friday the 13th, the final chapter writer Barney Cohen was brought in to do a rewrite on this version of the film, which added humour, action scenes, and a supporting villain. Joseph Zito was also hired by Canon to direct the film, having previously directed the commercially successful Invasion USA for the studio. Now, at this point, we get onto rumoured casting. So, again, bear with. For the role of Peter Parker, Spider-Man...
So what era are we talking here? So this is...
80s.
Mid-80s.
This is 80s. So for the role...
Michael J. Fox, surely?
No, because actually, that would have been... That would have been okay. No.
Yeah.
Far less suitable for the role. So who do you think was apparently considered to play Peter Parker, Spider-Man? Think who's a choice leading man of the mid 80s?
So not Michael J. Fox.
No. Youngish, I guess.
Tom Cruise.
Cruise. It was Cruise.
Oh right. Okay. There you go. Yeah.
Cruise.
I was thinking what films came out in '85. I thought Legend might have done. Right.
And actually, Cruise was around about the right age, I guess.
I would have watched the shit out of Tom Cruise being Spider-Man. That would have been amazing.
Oh God, can only imagine. Bob Hoskins was apparently considered for Dr. Octopus.
What cast?
Yeah.
Hoskins and Cruise.
and for Aunt May, Lauren Bacall and Katharine Hepburn were considered. So super glamour
creme de la creme of casting. That would have been all of that.
Now this and this is IMDb-baseable. Allegedly up for the role of Mary Jane, and I've only kept in the more credible names, and I'll tell you some of the ones that were also listed afterwards. So apparently up for Mary Jane, and again, this just does feel like a list of actresses.
Rebecca De Mornay?
No. Jennifer Jason Leigh, Ali Sheedy, Jodie Foster, Sarah Jessica Parker, Nicole Kidman, Julia Roberts, Molly Ringwald, Jennifer Connelly, and Winona Ryder, who were all certainly actresses working at that time.
They were just big actresses in the 80s.
But some of the names on IMDb. Now, bear in mind, this movie was let's say this is 1985. One of the names allegedly up for Mary Jane was Alison Hannigan, who I'm pretty sure would have been about 12 at the time.
No.
I think they were like
best.
Whoever makes up this IMDb trivia bullshit was like, who's got red hair? Alison Hannigan. She'll do. I'll put that in there and see if anyone runs with it. Well, we didn't. We caught you out. Stan Lee himself expressed his desire to play J. Jonah Jameson in the film.
Oh, he would have been great, wouldn't he?
Apparently he auditioned and didn't get it, so...
Oh. He looks the part. I don't know if he can...
He does look... Get me pictures of Spider-Man! So the project was tentatively titled Spider-Man the Movie, imaginative, and was budgeted between $15 and $20 million. However, following the critical and financial failure of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and Masters of the Universe, the He-Man movie, which were produced by Canon, the budget for Spider-Man was cut to $7 million. which even at that time was not a lot of money. So Joseph Zito, the director who'd been hired, he was unwilling to compromise and stepped down as director. And he was replaced by B-movie director Albert Pyun, who was willing to make the film at a lower budget. Apparently most of the movie would have now been set in the sewers of Brooklyn, so they were literally going to film in the sewers, where Spider-Man would chase after and fight with the Lizard. Pyun had planned to film 2 weeks' worth of scenes for Spider-Man, before nerdy Peter Parker is bitten by a radioactive spider, and then Scott Leva, who was the actor and stuntman he had planned to play the part, would undergo a supervised 8-week workout regimen to build muscle mass. So he would have like bulked up in the interim, so it seemed like he suddenly got super buff from the radioactive spider bite. But the project was cancelled following Canon's acquisition by Pathé and Menahem Golan's departure from the studio. So by 1989, Golan attempted to revive the project using the original script, budget and storyboards that he had previously developed at Canon. In order to receive production funds, he sold the television rights to Viacom, the home video rights to Columbia Pictures, and the theatrical rights to Carol Co. Pictures, where James Cameron became attached to write and direct the film. So Cameron had previously met with Stan Lee to discuss a possible X-Men film, until Lee apparently convinced Cameron that he would be a better choice to direct Spider-Man. Cameron submitted a treatment to Carol Co. in 1993, which apparently served as a darker, more adult take on the character's mythos. In addition to featuring Spider-Man's origin story, it also included variations on the villains Electro and Sandman. So Electro was reimagined as a megalomaniac... How do you say that? Megalomaniacal? He's a megalomaniac.
Yeah. How do you say that? All right, megalomaniac.
So, Electro was reimagined as a megalomaniacal, there you go, businessman named Carlton Strand, while Sandman was written as Strand's personal bodyguard named Boyd. Cameron's treatment also featured heavy profanity and a sex scene between Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson atop the Brooklyn Bridge. So I guess it's an improvement on the whole man turns into a giant tarantula attempt, but maybe not quite on point.
It's not for kids, is it?
So Carol Co. had set a $50 million budget for Spider-Man, but progress would be stalled when Golan sued Carol Co. for attempting to make the film without his involvement. James Cameron had recently completed True Lies for 20th Century Fox as part of a production deal with the studio. Fox attempted to acquire the film rights to Spider-Man for Cameron, but this proved unsuccessful. So this was kind of early to mid-90s at this point. So Cameron now abandoned the project and began work instead on Titanic, which of course eventually released in 1997. Yeah. So if James Cameron's Spider-Man had gone ahead, Titanic might never have been made and become a cinematic phenomenon. Cameron revealed in a 1997 interview on the Howard Stern show that he actually had Titanic star Leonardo DiCaprio in mind to play Peter Parker in his Spider-Man.
That would have been good.
He also apparently considered Michael Biehn at an earlier stage as well. Apparently Charlie Sheen actively campaigned for the role, but Cameron wasn't interested.
In the mid-90s?
Early 90s.
Okay, I suppose a bit old for even then, isn't he?
Hot Shots era. Now, can you guess who was in line to play Dr. Octopus in James Cameron's Spider-Man?
Oh wow! So we're talking.
I mean, go for your first instinct. Don't resist your first instinct.
Oh, Arnie.
It was Arnie. Yeah.
All right. Fucking hell! Every time.
Apparently, he was in line to play Doc Ock, but it didn't happen. So in 1995, MGM acquired 21st Century Film Corporation, which then gave them access to all the previous Spider-Man scripts that had been in development. MGM then sued Viacom, Sony Pictures and Marvel, who they accused of fraud in the original deal with Canon. And the following year, 21st Century, Carol Co. and Marvel would all file for bankruptcy. Now, this all sounds very dull. I'll explain why it's not in a minute. Marvel emerged from bankruptcy in 1998 and declared that Menahem Golan's option on making a Spider-Man film had expired and that the rights had reverted to them. Marvel then, having reclaimed the film rights, they sold them to Sony Pictures Entertainment, Columbia Pictures' parent company, for $7 million. So Marvel's bankruptcy from the sort of mid to late 90s is why the rights to so many of their heroes were sold off. You know, there was no Marvel Studios at this time, so they sold off the screen rights when they were in financial dire straits to the likes of Sony and Fox and Universal, the ramifications of which, of course, are still felt to this day, with Sony having a stake in Spider-Man still. So, in April 1999, Sony Pictures optioned from MGM all preceding script versions of a Spider-Man film, but only exercised the options on the Cameron material. However, while they kept parts of his treatment, the studio announced they were not hiring Cameron himself to direct the film, nor would they be using his script with the profanity and the sex. The studio lined up the likes of Roland Emmerich, Tim Burton, Tony Scott, Ang Lee, who would later direct Hulk, of course, Jan de Bont, and M. Night Shyamalan as potential directors for their Spider-Man movie.
Cream of the crop of this era's directors.
Yes,
every single one you could think of, man.
Chris Columbus, who he also was in line to direct Spider-Man, but turned it down to make the first Harry Potter movie, which came out just a year before. David Fincher was also apparently considered, but he didn't want to go the traditional route. He didn't want to depict Spider-Man's origin story, and instead wanted to make a film based on the 1973 comic book storyline, The Night Gwen Stacy Died, but the studio refused. If you want a little insight into my life, I have a comic cover from The Night Gwen Stacy Died, that storyline, framed and hung up in my living room, and I'm looking at it right now.
Let's get a photo of you next to it and put it up on socials.
Put it up on socials. Fans. Absolutely. So Sam Raimi was finally hired to direct Spider-Man in January 2000 for a planned summer 2001 release. He'd been a fan of the comic book during his youth, and his passion for Spider-Man was what earned him the job. Apparently he's an avid comic book collector in his private life, with a collection of over 25,000 comics. And Raimi had, in fact, been in contention to direct 1989's Batman before Tim Burton got the gig. So James Cameron's sort of the work he'd done on a Spider-Man movie then became the basis of a new screenplay written by, it's our old nemesis, Tom, David Cope. No, I looked it up. I did some research. Apparently, Koepp. Apparently, it's David Koepp. David Koepp. Yeah,
that's just confusing.
It's the last thing I would have guessed. So Koepp's first draft screenplay was apparently very similar to Cameron's, and still featured Cameron's versions of Electro and Sandman as villains. But then Koepp's second draft rewrite substituted the Green Goblin as the main antagonist, and it added Dr. Octopus as a secondary antagonist. This was at Sam Raimi's insistence, because he felt the Green Goblin and the surrogate father-son relationship between Norman Osborn and Peter Parker would be more interesting. And then later on, Dr. Octopus was dropped from the film entirely. In June, Columbia hired Con Air and Gone in 60 Seconds writer Scott Rosenberg to rewrite Koepp's material. But remaining constant in all the rewrites was the organic web shooter idea, from which had originated from Cameron's treatment. Apparently, Sam Raimi felt that it would stretch the audience's suspension of disbelief too far to have Peter Parker invent mechanical web shooters. So it's totally fine for a radioactive spider to bite you and give you spider powers, but for a teenager to invent web shooters, mechanical web shooters, is just beyond the pale. After the film's release, Marvel actually made a decision in the comics to have Peter Parker undergo a further mutation, which included having him shoot his own webbing rather than use his artificial webbing from his web shooters, a move which was met with some controversy. However, this was later undone in 2007 after the events of the One More Day storyline. It's not Les Mis.
One day more.
Another day with Mephisto. No, One More Day storyline, which rebooted the Spider-Man canon. The final film also changed the radioactive spider, which bites Peter Parker, to genetically designed super spider, as again it was felt that this was more realistic. They were like, if he gets bitten by a radioactive spider, he'll just get cancer and die. Whereas, genetically designed super spider, that'll give you powers. Sorted. As production neared, producer Laura Ziskin hired Alvin Sargent, who was the Oscar-winning writer of Ordinary People, to polish the film's dialogue, primarily between Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Columbia gave the Writers Guild of America a list of 4 writers as contributors to the final Spider-Man script, including Rosenberg, Sargent, and James Cameron, all 3 of whom voluntarily relinquished credit to the 4th writer, Koepp. The title page of David Koepp's April 14th, 2000 draft of the Spider-Man screenplay included the disclaimer, "This material is the exclusive property of Columbia Pictures Entertainment. Unauthorized transfer, photocopying, or reading of this material will result in the growth of large yellow pustules on your fingertips and hands, which, given your habitual self-abuse, did you think we didn't know, will soon spread to your genitalia. Also, posting, reading, or discussing this screenplay on the internet is a sure sign that you have failed to fill your empty life with worthwhile activities of your own, and it may be too late for you. Don't blame us. You were warned."
They know their audience, don't they?
So, at this point, casting began. And of course, in the final film, Tobey Maguire played Peter Parker / Spider-Man. Maguire had never read a Spider-Man comic book, but took the role because he liked the script. In an article published at the time titled "Tobey's Lonely Childhood Will Help Him in Spider-Man Role," he said, "I felt like I was an outsider. I think what happened to me made me develop this street sense of watching people and working out what made them tick, wondering whether I could trust them or not. I went to a lot of schools along the coast in California, made few friends, and stayed with aunts, uncles, and grandparents while my folks tried to make ends meet. It was tough. We had no money." The studio had expressed interest in actors again. Leonardo DiCaprio, he was considered even in this stage, early noughties, to play Peter Parker. Jude Law was apparently also a favourite.
Jude Law? How old was he at this point?
I don't know. Probably like
Jude Law was doing like AI and shit. He was at this point. He was like must be at least 30. There's no way he could pass as like an 18-year-old.
I mean, Tobey Maguire doesn't exactly look like a.
Wow, he's got a young face, isn't he, Tobey Maguire?
Like Jude Law's wizened.
Yeah, he was already like losing his hair then.
So, us taking pot shots at Jude Law.
No, I love Jude Law. He's one of the most attractive men of all time. I'm just saying. He was, he's not Spider-Man, is he?
Chris Klein, also apparently.
Chris Klein.
Just his
name.
name.
His Mamma Mia? Have you seen his Mamma Mia audition tape?
I have, but I'd love to see it again.
Hey, by the way, you guys had Mandy Moore in here? She is an angel of all angels. I don't know if you guys saw American Dreams that her and I did together, where I too sing, hopefully better here than I did up there. That was acting. This may be slight singing, but she is just a dream come true. You should hire her on the spot. She's amazing. Anyway, that's my own personal I love Mandy Moore scenario. Let's go, shall we? Before I embarrass myself further. Are we?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
I wasn't jealous before we met. Now every man that I see is a potential threat. And I'm possessive, it isn't nice. You heard me saying that smoking was my only vice. But now it isn't true. Now everything is new. And all I've learned has overturned. I beg of you, don't go wasting your emotion. Lay all your love on me.
My favourite bit in that is where he knows he's hit a bum note, and he quickly adjusts. He's like, no, drop an octave, Chris. Wes Bentley, he was also apparently in line to play Peter Parker, and Heath Ledger, who would of course go on to play the Joker magnificently in The Dark Knight. Also apparently up for Peter Parker were Topher Grace, who later played Eddie Brock, Venom in Spider-Man 3.
Topher Grace. Is it a diss to say he's a poor man's Tobey Maguire? Because that's
well, yeah. But I always felt like he was hired. I don't think he was the right casting for Spider-Man 3, but I see what they were going for, where they were like, he's the dark side of Peter Parker. We want to cast someone similar to Tobey Maguire.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea, yeah.
Yeah. Right, was it a good idea? No, but, you know. Josh Hartnett, he was apparently up for it as well, and Freddie Prinze Jr.
They're all too good looking. I know people could say that about Tom Holland now, but no, you got to have a bit of. That's why I like Tobey Maguire. You got to have a bit of realism about the fact that he's a down on his luck teenager.
Scott Speedman, Jay Roden, who would later play Paolo Bardosa in Footballers' Wives. They were also involved in screen tests for the lead role. IMDb also claims that Frankie Muniz was up for the part. Now, again, I did some research, and he would have been 15 at the time, which I know Spider-Man is meant to be a teenager, but I'm going to consider that stamp IMDb-batable. There's no way Frankie Muniz was up for Spider-Man. I don't believe it.
I can't believe Zach Braff wasn't up for it. He was a hot property at the time in 2002.
And there's a voiceover in Spider-Man. He got that down pat after Scrubs. Would have been great.
Yeah.
You could have cast John C. McGinley as Jonah Jameson. Just get the whole cast in.
That would have been amazing.
Sarah Chalke as Mary Jane. Get them all lined up. So Tobey Maguire was cast as Peter Parker in July 2000, having been Sam Raimi's primary choice for the role after he saw The Cider House Rules. Raimi felt that Maguire's performance in the film embodied much of the character and personality traits that he was looking for in Spider-Man. The studio was initially hesitant, feeling Maguire didn't fit the sort of superhero mould. But as you said, that's sort of the point. And he managed to impress studio executives with his audition, and he was then trained by a physical trainer, a yoga instructor, a martial arts expert, and a climbing expert, taking several months to improve his physique. Now, this is what I'm saying. If I had several months with a physical trainer, a yoga instructor, a martial arts expert, and a climbing expert, and if I cut out the KFC, I could look like Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man. Not like Chris Hemsworth in Thor, but perhaps Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man.
Chris Hemsworth in Thor in Endgame. Then maybe.
That's how I look now. Yeah, it's not even attainable. It's reached, my friend. I'm there. Also cast in the film, of course, Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, in what I think is fair to say is one of the all-time great comic book movie performances.
As of today, Oscorp Industries has surpassed Quest Aerospace as the principal supplier to the United States military. In short, ladies and gentlemen of the board, costs are down, revenues are up, and our stock has never been higher.
Wonderful news, Norman. Wonderful. As a matter of fact, it's the reason we're selling the company.
What?
Yes, Quest Aerospace is recapitalizing in the wake of the bombing. Expanding. They made a tender offer we can't ignore.
Why wasn't I told?
The last thing they want is a power struggle with entrenched management.
The deal is off if you come with it. The board expects your resignation in 30 days.
But you can't do this to me.
I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
Oh, Max, please.
Norman, the board is unanimous. We're announcing the sale after the World Unity Festival. I'm sorry.
You're out, Norman.
Am I?
What a dick that guy is. So Nicolas Cage, Jason Isaacs, John Malkovich, and Jim Carrey were considered for the role of Norman Osborn, but turned down the role, as did Mel Gibson, John Travolta, Brad Dourif, and Robert De Niro. Billy Crudup was apparently a favourite. Bill Paxton was also considered. His father, John Paxton, plays Norman Osborn's groundskeeper in the final film. But Willem Dafoe was cast in November 2000, and he insisted on wearing the uncomfortable Green Goblin costume, as he felt that a stuntman could not convey the character's necessary body language, with the 580-piece suit taking half an hour to put on, and Dafoe also performed 90% of his own stunts. Now, the look of the Green Goblin is, I would say, one of the less successful aspects of this film, which I do love. But before settling on the look used in the film, the original headgear created for the Green Goblin was an animatronic mask created by Amalgamated Dynamics, which was much closer to the original comic book look. Whereas the final look was criticised for its cartoonish design and for prohibiting expression. Now, this is probably one of the most egregious examples of won't translate to audio ever. In fact, we may just cut this out entirely. But Tom, just so you can get a look and we can get your reactions, here is the original Green Goblin mask, how it was supposed to look.
Wow, look at that. Something out of legend. It's terrifying. Like, obviously, doesn't translate to audio, but absolutely terrifying. Like, scarier than anything CGI could do. But I could see why they probably didn't go for it. Probably thinking of the kids watching.
Apparently
too much.
They did think it was too scary, but yeah. We'll get on later to how suitable or not Spider-Man was for kids. So Kirsten Dunst played Mary Jane Watson in the film. Kate Hudson turned down the role in order to appear in The Four Feathers, which of course we all remember. Tara Reid was apparently considered, so you could have had Tara Reid and Chris Klein, American Pie reunion. Didn't happen. Also auditioned apparently Kate Bosworth, Eliza Dushku, Mina Suvari, Jamie King, and Alicia Cuthbert. But Dunst ultimately won out. Although before casting Dunst, Sam Raimi had expressed interest in Alicia Witt, who had previously appeared in Dune and Twin Peaks. Dunst decided to audition after learning that Tobey Maguire had been cast, feeling that his casting meant the film would have a more independent feel. One of the most famous scenes in which he appears, of course, is, as mentioned, the famous upside-down kiss, which looks very, very romantic on screen, but apparently was not all that enjoyable for Tobey Maguire, who was hung upside down for quite some time, with water being like poured at great force, like down onto him, so his sinuses kept filling up with water while he was trying to kiss Dunst.
It's a living, isn't it?
It is a living. James Franco played Harry Osborne, although he had originally, again, screen tested to play Peter Parker. Now, again...
Too good looking.
Far too... I would argue too good looking to play Harry Osborne, who is meant to be sort of on a par with Peter Parker. He's meant to be like another kind of nerd. And yeah, Franco looks like James Dean. But, you know, it's a fine performance, but maybe not reflective of comic book Harry. So, again, I've got some names who were apparently considered for the role of Harry Osborn, and I've split them into two categories. The first is names that I actually believe may well have been up for it, such as Jason Lee, Justin Long, and Bill Hader. And then there's some names that I'm going to call bullshit. Patton Oswalt and Jack Black, both of whom were in their 30s at this point. And again, I know these are, you know, grown adults playing teenagers, but I don't think Jack Black at 31 could have passed for a high school student.
Yeah, this was a year before School of Rock, so I can't imagine.
Yeah. Cliff Robertson played Uncle Ben, and Rosemary Harris played Aunt May, although apparently Marion Ross from Happy Days was also considered. And of course, J.K. Simmons plays J. Jonah Jameson, the publisher of the Daily Bugle. Some of the actors considered to play Jameson alongside Simmons were R. Lee Ermey, who was terrifying in Full Metal Jacket. Hugh Laurie, Dennis Farina,
nice.
would have been interesting. Michael Keaton.
Wow.
Tremors star Fred Ward.
Yes.
It's a great lineup. Like all would have been great, I think, in their own ways. And again, Bill Paxton, who was also up for Norman Osborn. But Simmons was so iconic in the end that when the modern MCU movies introduced Jameson in 2019's Spider-Man Far From Home, that film's director John Watts said, "We thought if we're going to have J. Jonah Jameson, it had to be J.K. Simmons. There was never any discussion about it being anyone else because it just wouldn't have felt right."
Who is Spider-Man? He's a criminal, that's who he is. A vigilante. A public menace. What's he doing on my front page?
Mr. Jameson, is a page 6 problem.
We have a page 1 problem. Shut up.
They're really important clients. They can't wait.
They're about to.
Mr. Jameson, it's like this. We double booked page 6. See, so both Macy's and Conaway's both have 3/4 the same.
We sold out 4 printings. Sold out? Every copy. Tomorrow morning, Spider-Man, page 1 with a decent picture this time. Move Conway to page 7.
There's a problem with page 7.
And make it page 8 and give him 10% off.
Okay.
And make it 5%.
That can't be done.
Get out of here!
Problem is, we don't have a decent picture. Eddie's been on it for weeks. We can barely get a glimpse of him.
Oh, what is he, shy? If we can get a picture of Julia Roberts in a thong, we can certainly get a picture of this weirdo. Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man.
That line there, Eddie's been trying to get a picture of him for weeks. It was a reference to Eddie Brock, the Daily Bugle photographer who would go on to become Venom. Actor R.C. Everbeck was apparently intended to play Eddie Brock in Spider-Man. He'd been hired to play the role in a small part, but his scenes were cut from the final movie. Joe Manganiello, in his movie debut, portrays Peter Parker's bully, Flash Thompson. Although, again, also auditioned to play Peter Parker. Far too
good looking and just buff. What was he, buff then? I assume he was buff then. He always has been buff.
I think Manganiello came out of the womb buff, if I'm honest. In a 2014 interview, Manganiello revealed that he was offered $100 by 2 crew members to actually punch Tobey Maguire in the face during their fight scene.
Why? Because they all just hated Tobey Maguire?
I think they just did it in for him, yeah.
Oh.
Bullies.
I like you so much, I wish you had landed that punch on Tobey Maguire.
I'm not gonna lie, and I mean, and this is I had a wonderful time on that movie.
Which one, Spider-Man or Mighty Mike?
Both, but Spider-Man, and there was like an electrician who there was a crew guy who came up to me and said, "Listen, I'll give you $100 if you hit him in the face by accident." And then and he said, some of the other guys are in on it, and I went. And I looked over and like there was an electrician plugging something in, and he just looked up to me and gave me that look like, I'm not gonna punch him in the face, guys. So
did you think about it?
I probably wouldn't have worked again. Like, well, I mean, then again.
Well, not with the Tobey Maguire. You could have played Seabiscuit.
Now, I've never seen the Pete Holmes show, which that clip was taken from, but I don't know what the canned laughter's about. But anyway, enjoyable little story nonetheless from Joe.
Manganiello just seems like a great guy, and he will not punch you in the face for money. So, yeah.
Although he did do one of my most miserable interviews of all time.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Yeah, it was. I know why now, because at the time it was when True Blood, the final season, was coming out, but it was before it aired, and he was playing Alcide, and he was one of the best characters in it, and everyone was talking to him about it, and he was there. It was only a phone interview, but he was just there going, yeah, I mean, True Blood, yeah, I mean, it's a thing, right? Yeah. And it's like, and I came off the phone going, that was fucking useless, that was boring. And then, like, I watched the first episode of the new season, Alcide just gets killed off in really shit circumstances after all that. And I'm like, oh, that's why he didn't want to do the interview, because he's not even in True Blood season 7. It's ridiculous.
I bet he wanted to punch the producers of True Blood in the face. Wouldn't even have to pay him. So Bill Nunn and Elizabeth Banks played Daily Bugle editor Robbie Robertson and Jameson's secretary Betty Brandt, because it would be weird if it was the other way around. Banks also auditioned to play Mary Jane, but was told that she was too old because of Hollywood's sexism. Ted Raimi, Sam's brother, plays Daily Bugle employee Hoffman, who is not a comic book character, but was an original character invented for the movie. And Michael Papajohn, which is a fun name to say, he plays the carjacker, the criminal who allegedly murdered Ben Parker. Until Spider-Man 3 reveals that it was in fact Flint Marker, the Sandman, who killed Uncle Ben, thus invalidating Spider-Man's entire origin story, but don't worry about it. Bruce Campbell, a longtime colleague of director Sam Raimi, he cameoed as the announcer at the wrestling ring that Peter Parker fights in, and also has further cameos in the Spider-Man sequels. Raimi himself appeared off-screen, throwing popcorn at Parker as he enters the arena to wrestle Bonesaw McGraw, played by former professional wrestler Macho Man Randy Savage.
What's your name, kid?
The Human Spider.
The Human Spider, that's it? That's the best you got?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
The sum of $3,000 will be paid to the terrifying, the deadly, the amazing Spider-Man!
My name's the Human Spider.
I don't care. Get out there.
No, he got my name wrong.
Get out there, you moron.
up and spits you out, little man. I hope you brought your mommy with you. We're gonna break you someone to go crying. I'm gonna rip all 8 of your feet legs of yours off one by one.
Hello, guys? Will the guard please lock the cage doors at this time?
Hey, listen. It's some kind of mistake. I didn't sign up for a cage match. Hey, unlock the thing. Take the chain off.
Hey, Freak Show, you're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee briefly appears in the final cut of the film to grab a young girl from falling debris during the battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin at the World Unity Fair in Times Square, which is, and I believe we talked about this in our Stan Lee tribute mini-sode when he sadly passed away, that is my favourite Stan Lee cameo in any Marvel movie, because it's very brief, but there's just a scene where there's some debris about to fall on a young girl, and Stan just comes in, grabs her, and saves her. And I just like Stan the hero. Love it. He actually had a larger cameo cut from the film, but you can see it on the DVD's deleted scenes. He plays a street vendor who tries to sell Peter Parker a pair of sunglasses, saying, "These are the kind they wore in X-Men." Octavia Spencer plays a staff member at Peter Parker's wrestling match, and there are also other cameos, including R&B soul singer Macy Gray, who plays herself performing at the World Unity Fair, and Lucy Lawless, who appears in a montage sequence which sees New Yorkers reacting to Spider-Man. She did the appearance as a favour to her husband, the creator of Xena Warrior Princess, on which Sam Raimi had served as an executive producer. So filming officially began on Spider-Man on January the 8th, 2001. The film was mostly filmed in LA, shooting in New York for just 2 weeks. After the terrorist attacks on September the 11th, 2001, certain sequences were refilmed and certain images of the Twin Towers were digitally erased from the film. Sony also had to recall teaser posters which showed a close-up of Spider-Man's head with the New York skyline, including the World Trade Center towers, reflected in his eyes. The film's original teaser trailer also involved a group of bank robbers escaping in a helicopter, which Spidey traps in a gigantic spider web spun between the World Trade Center towers. So this teaser trailer also had to be pulled. Scenes of New Yorkers throwing trash at the Green Goblin and Spider-Man perched alongside the American flag were added after September the 11th to reflect the city's sense of unity and patriotism. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Visual effects supervisor John Dykstra was hired to... I have no idea if that's how you pronounce his name. I apologise, John, if I've mangled it. John,
I'm sure John's listening.
John was hired to produce the film's visual effects in May 2000. He convinced Sam Raimi to make many of the stunts in the film computer-generated, as they would have been physically impossible to achieve in real life with stuntmen and so on. When studio executives were shown shots of the computer-generated character, they believed it was actually Tobey Maguire performing the stunts because the CGI was just that realistic. Although one scene in which Peter Parker catches Mary Jane's lunch on a tray involved no CGI. With the help of a sticky substance to keep the tray planted on his hand, Tobey Maguire performed the stunt exactly as seen in the final film after 156 takes.
Was it worth it?
It's a great scene. Take 156. Fucking hell, come on, mine. You're right in that's incredibly impressive knowing that he did that for real, but because it's so outrageous, you assume that it is CGI, in which case, why bother? It's
pointless.
It's like in the latest Mission Impossible films where Tom Cruise actually does a halo jump, but it's so obscene that he does it that you don't I'm almost like, well, I don't believe he did it. But he did do it, but I don't believe it. Because why would any human do that?
You might as well have not bothered.
Exactly. Don't bother. At a certain point, it stretches credibility so far that even if you do it, I don't believe you. Sam Raimi worked hard to plan all the sequences of Spider-Man swinging from building to building, which he described as ballet in the sky. But the complexity of such sequences meant that the budget for the film rose from the initially planned $70 million to around $100 million. And CGI shots were made more complicated because of the main character's individual colour schemes. So Spider-Man and the Green Goblin had to be shot separately for effect shots because Spider-Man had to be shot in front of a green screen because of the blue on his costume, and a Green Goblin, who's all green, had to be shot against a blue screen. Shooting them together would have resulted in one character being erased from the shot, which I'm sure was a massive pain in the arse, but it's not a great deal you can do because they're based on how they look in the comic books. Now, did you know, Tom, because I didn't,
most certainly not.
There was... I was surprised you even watched the film. That there was almost an X-Men crossover in Spider-Man.
Ah, no.
So in an interview to the Huffington Post given in 2013, Hugh Jackman revealed, in the first Spider-Man, Kevin Feige reminded me of this, we really tried to get me to come on and do something, whether it was just a gag or just to walk through the shot or something. The problem was we couldn't find the suit. His Wolverine suit. The suit was stuck in something, and so when they were in New York, when I was there, we couldn't get it together. So we very nearly had like a proto-MCU with Wolverine making a cameo in Spider-Man. It was all going to be one universe, but it didn't happen just because someone had, mislaid Hugh Jackman's X-Men suit, got lost in shipping, and that put Paige the idea. Tardy. So alongside Spider-Man's release came two soundtracks, one featuring composer Danny Elfman's full film score, and a second, music from and inspired by Spider-Man, which also contains a portion of the score, as well as songs It's What We're All About by Sum 41 featuring Kerry King from Slayer, Aerosmith's version of the Spider-Man theme, and, of course, Hero by Nickelback's Chad Kroeger featuring Josey Scott, then the lead singer of Saliva. And I don't know about you, Tom, but when I think of Spider-Man, I think of a world full of killing and blood spilling. Josey Scott looks like a character played by Jack Black, doesn't he? Like, he doesn't look real.
So good, so good. Now, we've done karaoke a few times. We've and that's always on the list, isn't it? We always do a bit of Hero and do the harmonies as well. We always pick who's Chad, who's Josey. But it always made me laugh because it was always like Chad Kroeger, who, bear in mind, Nickelback only became like a worldwide thing like maybe the year before, so he's only just become like famous. But Josey Scott, no one knew who Josey Scott was unless you were a massive Saliva fan. No one knew who, but he got a name check but he knew he wasn't as big as Chad, so it was Chad Kroeger feat Josey Scott. But yeah, back then, that for me, Hero, but Chad, those two great guys.
This is the most animated you've been throughout the whole episode. I knew this would happen as soon as you got onto Hero.
No, I just feel like this song is like, when we talk about Limp Bizkit in Mission Impossible, I feel like this song really encapsulates my youth and really and this is still in the era where film studios made an effort with a theme tune. They did that back then. They most big films will go, well, we need a big song to go with it, and from way back to like Bryan Adams, they would always do that kind of thing. Whereas it just doesn't happen anymore, sadly. None of the Marvel films bothered.
I'd love it if they had like a ballad.
Yeah, every single film had its own.
It does feel like it was something that kicked off as a result of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and everything I do it for you with Bryan Adams and
The Bodyguard, and all those films.
Of course, but what I liked in particular was when they made the spiritual sequel to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was of course the Three Musketeers, and they were right, okay.
Brian's back. That's a given.
Brian's back, but I feel like we need to up the ante somewhat. We can't just bring back Brian. Even though
who are you thinking? Who are you thinking?
Well, I feel like if you're going to have someone join Brian, got to be able to compete in the gravel stakes.
And also, it's the Musketeers. Maybe we should have like three of them.
So okay, so who else has got gravity vocals? Rod Stewart. Get Rod in.
Stewart, yeah.
Get Rod in.
Yeah,
and then we need a third one. So Sting, I guess. And they're like, well, I'm not sure there's enough for like 3 guys to do on this song. So we'll go, okay, we'll have Brian sing some of the lines, Then we'll have Rod sing some of the lines. What's Sting doing? Sting's just sort of going...
Sort of copies the lines?
Sting just sort of goes... Oh, for one, and that's it. He just has like this one bit of the song, but it wouldn't work without all 3 of them.
No, you need to sing as well. You need to sing.
All for one, all for love.
The best bit about. We should do Three Musketeers, really, shouldn't we? That's crying out to be done.
For more of that sort of great banter, wait until we do our Three Musketeers episode. I might do that next, actually.
Let's make it
So yeah, now I love Hero as well. That song for me is intrinsically linked with this movie, and just hearing it transports me back to 2002. I'm 15 again in the cinema, loving watching Spider-Man. So on the recording, along with of course Chad Kroeger and Josey Scott, were Mike Kroeger, who was the bassist of Nickelback, Tyler Connolly, who was the lead singer and guitarist of Theory of a Dead Man, and Matt Cameron, who was the drummer of Soundgarden. So it's like a proper super group.
Supergroup. Why didn't they get? Why didn't they just come up with the band name? Why didn't they get a name check?
Yeah. So the song was nominated for Best Song Written for a Motion Picture, Television, or
only nominated. How dare you?
Or other visual media. Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal, and Best Rock Song at the 45th Grammy Awards in 2003. And the music video, which sees Kroeger, Scott and co. perform the song on a CGI New York City rooftop with footage of the movie spliced in between, was directed by Nigel Dick, who directed Britney's famous videos for Baby One More Time and Oops, I Did It Again, 2 of the most iconic music videos of all time, and the video for the original Do They Know It's Christmas by Band Aid. So,
bloody hell.
So 3 iconic music videos and Do They Know It's Christmas by Band Aid.
Also featuring Sting.
Yeah, there you go. They're always like, yeah, get Sting in. Come on. So as you mentioned if anyone's listened all the way through this, you mentioned this at the start. Spider-Man was a big box office hit. It became the first film to reach $100 million in a single weekend, surpassing the previous record holder, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone. Which made $90 million in a single weekend. It earned $39.4 million in its opening day alone in the US, the highest opening day at the time, until it was surpassed by its sequel, Spider-Man 2, which made $40.4 million in 2004 in a single day. It had a total box office gross of over $821.7 million worldwide. Back
then as well.
Back then. 20 years ago, on a budget of $139 million. It was the 3rd highest grossing film of 2002, the highest grossing superhero film at the time, and the 6th highest grossing film overall at the time of its release.
Well, you know, like they keep releasing, like when we on our Patreon, we moaned about Avatar reclaiming the most highest grossing film ever because they re-released it recently.
I'd forgotten that happened, and I'm annoyed again.
Yeah. So they re-released it, and now it's the highest grossing film. It's overtaken Endgame again. Blech. Why don't they re-release Spider-Man again? Because it would easily make $200,000 at the cinema worldwide. You get over $1 billion at least. Might as well for a laugh.
Re-release all of the films in the top 10, so that they keep each one after the other knocks Avatar off the top spot. That'd be fun. That'd be satisfying. So as of last year, Spider-Man ranks as the 36th highest grossing film of all time in the US and Canada, not adjusted for inflation. And it is also currently the 58th highest grossing film of all time. Now, I know it was 20 years ago, but it was the 6th highest grossing film of all time in 2002, but now it's the 58th highest grossing film, so 52 films have overtaken it since.
But like now like even Minions 7 will get $1 billion, do you know what I mean? It doesn't really mean much anymore, because it's all, as we've said before, highest grossing just means the ticket prices now. It's not footfall, is it? So it doesn't actually mean anything.
I shit a million now at $1 billion, right, even at the box office. As of 2020, it is still the 6th highest grossing comic book movie of all time, adjusted for inflation. Only Avengers Infinity War, The Dark Knight, Black Panther, The Avengers, and Avengers Endgame have sold more tickets than Spider-Man. And it was also a critical success. So, Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 90%. Contemporary reviews were mostly positive. USA Today critic Mike Clark said that the casting of Tobey Maguire rivaled that of Christopher Reeve as 1978's Superman, cast, of course, by Richard Donner, R.I.P. The Hollywood Reporter's Kirk Honeycutt said the filmmaker's imaginations work in overdrive, from the clever design of the cobwebby opening credits and Spider-Man and MJ's upside-down kiss to a finale that leaves character relationships open-ended for future adventures. However, there was one dissenting voice. Can you guess who?
Not Ebert.
Ebert.
Oh, Ebert.
Ebert didn't like it.
He's so like all over the place, isn't he? But
fickle.
Sometimes
fickle is Rog.
I think it all depended. I mean, it's the same with any critic, but I feel like it's just the mood he was in on the day. He didn't get it. Not for Ebert that day.
So Ebert gave Spider-Man 2.5 stars out of 4. He said that the film lacked a decent action element. He said, consider the scene where Spider-Man's given a cruel choice between saving Mary Jane or a cable car full of school kids. He tries to save both so that everyone dangles from webbing that seems about to pull loose. The visuals here could have given an impression of the enormous weights and tensions involved, but instead the scene seems more like a bloodless storyboard of the idea. But despite Ebert's misgivings, the film was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, one for Best Visual Effects, the other for Best Sound, but it lost to Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers and Chicago, respectively.
But what a niche complaint by Ebert. He's going on about the pulley systems and stuff. What are you talking about? Why are you so obsessed with that?
The pulley systems. Bloody hell, Ebert. Oh. So, something I wanted to address before we wrap up this episode is the 12A debacle about Spider-Man. Do you know there's things that in no way really affect you in your sort of day-to-day life, but it will just pop into your head, like Avatar reclaiming its spot at the top of the all-time box office, and it will just niggle at you, and I'll just go, that's annoying. Still annoys me now, and this is one of those. So Spider-Man caused some controversy in England when the BBFC rated it 12. They went on record to say that it was the most violent movie they had seen that was allegedly aimed at younger viewers. Many parents then complained about the decision, saying they were disappointed their children could not legally see the film. So, a new 12A rating was introduced. This was the inception of the 12A. That was introduced in August 2002, and Spider-Man was re-released with this new rating, along with a new marketing campaign stressing that children could now go and see the film. Parents then complained that the film was too violent for their children. Yes, of course it was.
Too violent?
Yeah, but that's why it was rated 12 in the first place. And then you complained, you got your way, and you still weren't happy. Still annoys me. Don't listen to people. People are stupid. That still annoys me to this day. It's like the ultimate example of people's stupidity. Makes me furious.
That's a Two Geeks quote. People are stupid.
That's the Paul quote. So in January 2003, Sony revealed that a sequel to Spider-Man was in development and would be produced and directed by Sam Raimi once again. On March the 15th, 2003, a trailer revealed that the film, Spider-Man 2, would be released on June the 30th, 2004. More on that, perhaps, in a future episode. But, now this is interesting. If you're still listening, in 2003, an animated series was launched set in the continuity of the Spider-Man movie, just a year after the film's release. Yeah, featuring, do you know who played Peter Parker?
No.
Neil Patrick Harris. Yeah. So, set shortly after the events of 2002 Spider-Man, this animated series sees Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson and Harry Osborne start attending Empire State University together.
Empire State U wants to bulldoze the Villeroy Towers housing project, then the people who live there should be compensated. 90% of those people work right here on campus. Where will they work if they're displaced? When will they work if they have to look for a place to live?
She's got a good point. A lot of your wild-eyed student radicals agree, and some just love the idea of a good protest. I wish I could say I was either one of those. But here I am, a college freshman, yet still on the outside looking in. And, as is often the case, I find myself looking at her. That's Mary Jane Watson. If someone would just pay me to take pictures of her. Who am I kidding? I'd take that job for free.
Not the best animation in the world, but, you know.
Weirdly, it's because it's very early CGI animation. It's dated worse, I think, than the 90s Spider-Man animated series. Looks like a PS2 cutscene, But
so this is in continuity with the that makes but there's nothing similar to anything.
What do you mean?
Well, none of them resembled anyone at all.
Vaguely they look the same. I mean,
and this is a sequel to the first film.
Yeah.
Even though he's now a dork again. I suppose he was still a dork at the end of this one, I assume.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Is he still a dork? I can't remember.
At what point does Peter Parker stop being a dork?
Well, I thought Mary Jane at least liked him at the end of this one and fancied him a bit. And,
She did. She did. But do you remember? Do you remember he turned her down? He was like, "No, I can't because I got to be Spider-Man. Sorry."
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I enjoyed Neil Patrick Harris's voice work anyway.
He was giving it his all, and this series also featured Lisa Loeb as Mary Jane, Ian Ziering as Harry Osborne, Rob Zombie as the voice of the Lizard, and Final Destination's Devon Sawa as Flash Thompson. And, it's come up a few times, Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin, a role he'd first played in 2003's Daredevil movie. So, along with Hugh Jackman's planned cameo, does that... If this film is in Spider-Man's continuity, does that suggest that this Spider-Man film is in a shared continuity with not only X-Men, but also Daredevil? It's kind of, again,
possibly.
It's like the proto-MCU, the MCU that almost was. There you go.
But this has got to be one of the first, or the last rather, like back in the 90s, any film had its animated version, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then, I don't remember there being anything like this in recent memory, so this has got to be one of the last times that TV companies were like, come on, let's do an animated version of,
Have you already forgotten about the Rocketeer animated series? Come on. I mean, no, I know what you...
And Fast and Furious, what's it called? Turbocharged or something? What was it called?
Spy Racers on Netflix.
Spy Racers.
It's coming back. Yeah. It's coming back. It's a throwback. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. There's no Godzilla the animated series anymore, is there?
No.
And good. So, despite strong reviews and decent ratings, this Spider-Man series was cancelled by MTV after just one season. It also events that we see in this series contradict what later unfolds on the big screen in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. So this is almost like an alternate sequel to Spider-Man.
Yeah, I don't consider it canon, to be honest.
On the basis of the 30 seconds I just watched.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm going to rule that out. So now, of course, flash forward 20 years later, Sam Raimi is returning to Marvel to direct Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is just a fun title to say. And this, coupled with the introduction of a multiverse into the MCU and the confirmed return of actors featured in the Raimi movies, including Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2, have sparked rumours that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, who starred in the two Amazing Spider-Man movies, will reprise their roles in Spider-Man No Way Home, which is out in just 5 months. So...
Really? God. They haven't... I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do here, because Tom Holland keeps coming out and saying, nope, not happening.
Well, and Andrew Garfield has denied it as well. And recently, you never know how much to invest in this stuff. There was a guy who claimed to have run into Tobey Maguire on the street, and he had a selfie with Tobey Maguire, and he posted it on Reddit, and someone asked, did you ask him about Spider-Man? And the guy was like, yes, he said he couldn't talk about it. And then they said, what? How did he react when you asked him? And the guy said, he smiled and winked. And I'm like, did this happen? Like, I'm not even convinced the selfie's real. Maybe you just photoshopped that. But I like the idea of Toby just like not saying anything, just giving him a little wink. But
what's the line? What's the line in Spider-Man 3? Like, when he does the whole, what was it?
Now dig on this.
Yeah. Did he say that as well at the same time?
That should be when Tobey Maguire returns, when he appears in the MCU for the first time. His opening line should be, "Now dig on this."
But J.K. Simmons appeared, didn't he?
Correct.
In the last one.
Yeah.
So is that the first inkling of what they're about to do, or is that them just being silly?
Well, that is the $1 billion question. I hope it's true, because it'd be such a nostalgia rush. But also, if it's not true, no matter how good the next Spider-Man film is, if it doesn't have Tobey Maguire in it, I'm going to come away feeling disappointed, which is a shame, because it could be brilliant. But if it's not got Tobey Maguire in it, I'm not. I don't feel like I've got.
I don't think anyone's crying out to see Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx and not see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. I don't get the point. I don't get the point why they would do that. So surely, if it's not this film, it's the next film or the Doctor Strange sequel. It's got to be one of these films. Yeah.
With Sam Raimi directing the next Doctor Strange movie,
well,
maybe
it's probably that then. It's probably that then, isn't it? Because that's them technically telling the truth. It's like, oh no, they're not appearing in Spider-Man. It's because it's going to be in the next Doctor Strange film. That's what it is.
There you go.
It's my prediction. Yeah.
Confirmed.
Yes.
So that is it. If this got your spidey sense tingling, head to 2geeks2beers.com for more semi-drunken drivel, where you can hear 90 plus episodes of this sort of nonsense. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Global Player, and all other good podcast outlets. And while you're there, please give us a rating and a review. We would very much appreciate it.
And as ever, please follow us on all our social channels, which is at 2geekscast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for some special exclusives on there, plus some updates on our latest recordings, so you can get in touch before we record our next one and all that.
You can also email us, podcast@2geeks2beers.com. Send us feedback, thoughts and suggestions for future episodes, and we're also on Patreon, where you can sponsor the podcast, help to fund our recording sessions, pay for our equipment. All your money goes directly back into making the show, and you'll also get special bonus material, as if this wasn't enough, hearing us wang on about Spider-Man for over an hour. You can also get exclusive Patreon-only mini-sodes, outtakes, and depending on how much you donate, even a mini episode or full-length episode that's exclusive to you. So until next time, that's it. Thanks for joining us. We've been 2 Geeks, and now that the world isn't ending, it's love that we're sending to you.
I am so high,
I can hear heaven. I loved those those movie tie-in songs. A lot of great ones linked to comic book movies. Yeah, Kiss from a Rose by Seal, Batman Forever.
One of my favourites. Yeah.
Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me. Probably by U2. Probably the best thing about Batman and Robin.
No, it's Batman Forever as well. Same film.
No, Batman and Robin, mate. Batman and Robin.
No. I'm not having that. That's Batman and Batman Forever as well. Trust me.
Google it.
I'll do it now. You're making a fool out of yourself because you're hold Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me by U2 from 1995 from Batman Forever, mate. Yeah.
Do you know what? I just think I couldn't quite believe that there'd be two songs that good on one soundtrack.
I know.
Wow.
I know.
All right, mind blown. Fair enough. Also, more recent examples. There have been a few examples. You had Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee on the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack. It's a great song. You also had, of course, the entirety of Prince's Batman soundtrack from 1989. But there have been a few lesser examples of the genre, I would say. Are you aware, Tom, from 1997 Steel, Men of Steel by Shaquille O'Neal,
oh, no.
Featuring Ice Cube, Be Real, KRS-One, and Peter Guns.
Who's Peter Guns?
You're about to find out.
Oh, God.
I'm sick with it, but it'll still take 10 of ya to take the emperor's temperature. Can I represent with ya? Smoking hit with ya. Pass the from east to west, cube to KRS. Take it from the dime. Where I'm from, the man of steel is made of Teflon. Keep your best on, hit me with your best one, baby, and watch me mac you coming through with hard and Shaq Fu. Never up in spot goes when we knock.
I gotta say, while that's no Kiss from a Rose, I quite enjoyed that.
It's better than Shaq Fu. Certainly not the worst thing that Shaquille O'Neal's put out into the world.
It's amazing that back then, if you were a top basketball player, you can just do this as a side career. Whilst he was still top of basketball for another 10, 15 years.
Yeah, top of his game. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like he retired and then, Michael Jordan. Well, no, I suppose Michael Jordan did Space Jam at the same time, didn't he? So I think in America, you can just do what the fuck you like. As long as you keep performing on the basketball court. Doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want, and no one will take the piss either. You'll be a credible. So was Shaq taking the piss out of this at the time? I don't feel like he was. I feel like he got away with it. Whereas imagine if in the 90s, if like Alan Shearer just decided, do you know what? I'm gonna I'm gonna release an album.
Or Glenn Hoddle. Imagine
Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle. Yeah, exactly. Look what happened. Ridiculed, and everyone hated him for it. Ridiculous.
So I think we've now got 2 poll quotes from this episode. One is "people are stupid," and the second is "in America, you can do whatever the fuck you like."